each different bubble of reality is true.
A galactic historian is a person that looks at all the lines of dramatic karma.
Nudge, nudge. It's the Holy Grail.
Improvise. Mysterious.
It's counter psychic intelligence.
Why is DNA farming of this star cluster so important?
Because we do manifest our reality. We do create our reality.
So the doctor worked for Cambridge, but also sold the data. Because there was no data restrictions, like you go to any major corporations, they don't let you have access to their data.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like data from an IT perspective, data is the key, right? You can replace hardware, you can replace servers, but the data content is the most precious thing of an organization, you know?
Where was the oversight? So the way that this worked is he created an app that did personality tests, and people were getting paid for this. So that's how they built the data first. And then they had other apps that would, this main app would get access to all your pictures, everything, and then be, linked into the AI that had all the other things that it was looking for: facial recognition, blah, 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 pattern recognition, so on and so forth. Who might live around you? What are your common interests? Okay, so on and so forth. That information was assembled and then brought to political consumers who would be using that initial massage data to do even deeper dives over 16 to 18-month election cycle. So the whole Cambridge Analytica, it isn't over. He didn't get one access to the data. As soon as he created an app, he has continuous access. And the app was only recently removed. Like in the last
port. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. It's a direct hookup to the live feed of the massive databases that Facebook would have on massive like server farms, like massive.
Right. Because they created a business model that allowed that to happen. Because that's how little they respect your data.
So I asked the money question. How much are these guys making from all this?
Billions. They're electing presidents. Okay? Billions. Now, what I believe will happen is you will discover, or what will be discovered, is that doctor has really big secret bank accounts.
Cayman Island stuff.
We're next level shit, yeah.
Tax havens.
Right.
Tax havens.
All over the world, all through cryptocurrencies or some, who knows. That's the new way to launder your own money.
True.
It's hide in cryptocurrencies.
True.
Yeah.
So, was Facebook making a lot to their bottom line to this?
Oh God, they were the second richest tech company in the world. Just Google it. How rich is Facebook?
So, yeah, like the FANGs, Amazon, Netflix, Facebook, and Google, they're called the FANGs, and they're like 30, 40, 50% of the NASDAQ, which influence the stock market, and they've been on a tear for a decade as far as share price, and it'd be interesting to see what happens with Facebook's share price now and their profit warnings and all that sort of stuff, So you're going to see that reveal itself, whether or not they've got other funding and all that sort of stuff, and magic accounting, who knows?
Yes. But mystical accounting.
Yeah.
So in 2016, it was worth $350 billion. So they just lost $50 billion in market cap from this whole debacle.
Perception debacle. Yeah. Because then fear enters the market and people sell off, and then the traders are in because they smell blood in the water, because when there's a fall in price, you can short it as well and make money on the down. So there's extra incentive to make it the extremes of price volatility and stock prices greater.
So ultimately, what Facebook represents is a something that should have been looked at under antitrust laws. And this is why they sold their data so fast early on, because I think the majority of the investors understood that it would only go so long because of the way the user system is so the obsessive user system, that inevitably that the antitrust thing would come up, which would be a forever thorn in the company's side. So everyone needed to get their money early, and that's why the data is they don't respect your data or any of their users, because they nowhere near be this ridiculous.
Yeah.
Why did Facebook become so popular at a time where there were tens of thousands of other social media systems out there? Because
it was very competitive early on, absolutely.
What it came down is because the emerging phone markets got the deal to put Facebook on, just like when Microsoft had its WordPerfect versus anyone else's shit on there, or their programs, their operating system versus anyone else's was in the whole contract for all the computer makers. Same thing, mass implementation. Okay?
I get that, yeah. It's like a monopolization of interaction, so it's there and it's in the door already. It's a bit like
it is door already.
It's even going back to say Rockefeller when he got the oil contract to transport the oil,
exactly,
and cut out the competition straight off out the door. You know, that's how he got to that apex of position, and it's a pattern relative to the reality at the time, relative to the tools at the time. So going to Bill Gates and all that, it's just in the narrative now.
Right.
It's not into the past yet.
Exactly. So what will ultimately come out of these rumblings with Facebook? By the summer, it'll die down. Facebook will run a "I'm here to protect you" campaign and donate a few $1 million to Hairs for Cancer Kids. And it'll do a whole bunch of videos on doing the right thing, and they'll enhance social justice, and then they'll go back to selling everyone's data like they did before.
Because people will want that convenience. They
are buying the convenience because it's on their phone every day. Until there's a mass deletion of accounts in mass, what's happened now is no more than a standard big month where they lose a lot. But they all come back eventually.
It'll be processed into the algorithms of future potentials. You know,
exactly.
It's factored in. It's like standard deviation sort of stuff, plus or minus 3 or 5%. Yeah.
It's designed to be user obsessive.
Yeah.
Okay. Especially
and then in the background, probably what it's going to do is lock down interactions of consciousness beings, you know, the wildfire stuff.
Mm-hmm. In a polarized environment inside there. Now, one other little thing to add is that there's a lot of competition to Facebook right now, but they don't retain audiences, for one thing. So you have this every few months, you have this thing that goes around with people deleting their Facebook accounts and they go somewhere else. And then they realize that, you know, there's no one else in those other places.
Yeah. And
they can spout their shit and there's no one for them to fight with. Okay? Then they come back to Facebook to start fighting people. Or fighting causes or concepts or ideologies. Because too many people believe taking somebody else's post about racism and posting it on your wall where only your friends see means you're doing something that actually changing the world.
When in actual fact, a lot of these might be AI bots that are just there to trigger you with NLP.
Exactly, because they already know what you're a sucker for.
Yeah. And while change is the constant, you haven't actually changed at all. You haven't walked away from that behavior pattern.
That's right.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, to me, the constant theme, right, is that when something has such a reach, an awareness, an acceptance, there's a lot of magic going on. You know, a lot of black box technology and how it actually becomes accepted in society consciously and willfully to even though there's all this stuff going on around it, we actually still choose it to empower it, you know? And to have such phenomenal success.
Right.
So
there's
a lot going on.
If we were to have direct access to the minutes that were presented to the high-end board members of Facebook over the last, let's just say, year, there would be enough evidence to produce treason all the way around. And I would say that for all the top 15 tech companies, that if you had just their board minutes alone, it could prove treason beyond a shadow of doubt for every person that's in there and for everyone that's at the high level of the company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, to me, right, like NSA gets a lot of negative press, absolutely all the time, all right, and it deservingly so, all right.
Yeah.
But then, like, say, even the CIA and stuff, right, and they deserve it on some level. But to me, also, who else is going to rein in these organisms, these intelligences? You know, there's no mechanism to actually control them because their resources are so vast already. Let alone the off-world sort of stuff, getting into dark matter. You know.
Yeah.
So while they're playing in a field, they actually have a lot of. I don't see them all as bad, you know. That's what I'm sort of saying.
They're not, and if they were all bad, the system wouldn't be addictive.
Yeah, it would be 1984, you know. Like...
Right.
Alrighty.
All right, so the setup question is, you asked me, let's talk about Cambridge Analytica and some of the deeper implications you see from it.
Yeah. I just mentioned to Andrew that I'm actually working on a Origins of War Part 3, and it was basically going to be just a bit of a summary of AIs on the various levels, such as in the control rooms and the good and the bad aspects of that, and a cyber warfare video I did with Andrew and Sean a while back. And we're talking today, which is April the 5th, April the 6th, 2018, and it's going to be mixed up with quite a few other clips of different ages and stuff like that. And there's something going on interesting with Facebook at the moment, and Andrew actually dropped a pretty good bombshell for me, and I'm in the throes of creating this product that's going to sort of define the AI perspective from Andrew. So do you want to offer what you felt would add to that, mate?
Yes. So Facebook is in a bit of a pickle dealing with a company called Cambridge Analytica. Now, a variety of material that's come out is showing that this doctor that had some form of deal with Facebook was harvesting data and selling that data, and as much as 50 million users had their data stolen or analyzed without them knowing, including their friends and family, and everyone within their network. So it's quite closer to 300 or 400 million users have been used by this Cambridge Analytica. You have Mark Zuckerberg testifying in front of the European Union, in front of the American Congress, so on and so forth. And my statement now is, what is behind Cambridge Analytica and why it is in the news right now is for that doctor that was in charge of the Cambridge Analytica program was actually using an artificial intelligence as a commercial tool to sell information to political groups, which goes back to show that we have a mercenary system to the highest bidder inside the American political organizations. And that Cambridge Analytica is going to be shown in the Italian elections, it's going to be shown in the European elections, for using an AI to chart people's social media processes and to create stories and run as many as 30 to 50,000 bots on different sites to generate arguments and complaints in favor for their analytics. A
Interesting.
complete management system that used the Facebook harvesting data and a variety of other harvested data to create a plan in which they sell to a political organization, which they can implement over 18 months of an election season.
Fascinating. It's very interesting, mate, because I've actually, what I've shared with Andrew many times throughout many of the recordings I've done with him is that I watch a lot of the video shows that are released because there's a lot of interesting soft disclosures going on, and one of them is Homeland. And Homeland's in the 7th series at the moment, and what it's about, it's the narrative is about Russia, like information warfare, which is fascinating, trying to take down the US presidency. And in that, they've got this particular agent that's really technically advanced on dispersing information, and he's got all these bots, and they're all fake, and it's all creating a narrative through a threshold of perception, and then it's into the public, and it's really like a wildfire of disinformation. And they've got the overlays of the locations where the servers are and the relationship to the bots, and then they're seeing it on all these overlays of scale in like technical sort of visual way. It's brilliant. And the 6th season was actually really cool because it was about this Alex Jones sort of character that was working with the warfare division of the CIA, and they had fusion centers where they had all the bots going and stuff like that. So it's actually fascinating. I don't agree with the storylines, but they're presenting it in a way that actually is revealing a lot of truth to me. So it's very cool.
There's another TV series called The Blacklist, and I believe it was season 2 or 3. I'm not exactly sure, where they had a one of their people that they were trying to capture. His special thing was he can manipulate all the social media things to create events, create personalities, move you around country and place, and use facial recognition against the system itself for hiding terrorists, moving people through, so on and so forth. And then there's the show, what's it called?
Person of Interest.
Person of Interest, yes. Where I was referring to Cambridge Analytica, you have Samaritan, and then you have what I'm talking about, somebody that has purchased an AI, because yes, AIs are on the market to be purchased. Car factories have been using AI since the early 2000s, and you can actually go and buy different forms of AI for factories. And what does that AI do? It looks at your employees coming in and goes out. It loses all the analytics and everything from each machine that it's plugged into, the amount of electricity that it uses to make an efficient network. That's what it artificially does. It's programmed. Now, if you have something that's similar to a commercial AI that is now owned by a doctor who's harvesting information, he's not the first one to do it. He's just the first one to get potentially caught.
Yeah, because I think the interesting thing about the difference with person of interest and this Facebook thing is the person of interest goes through the NSA sort of trunk lines, whereas this is just the data collected on actual, like a social platform, which is an isolated section of the whole internet. Yeah.
And then the AI massages the data to create usable pieces of information in prediction models.
Yes. Prediction modeling is a very big thing to be aware of because it's all just data, and then it's the whole algorithm of the reality is a massive greater scale of what we're talking about here, right?
And what will come out if Cambridge Analytica is exposed in the way that I think that it'll be exposed, it's not guaranteed yet, that this last election cycle, both the Democrats and the Republicans hired 2 forms of Cambridge Analytica. What went on is the Trump campaign used their data and analytics to promote his live speeches and what he would actually say, so it would have a far bigger trigger on social media, whereas the Clinton campaign used the AI to go after its base, not for organizing, but what was going to make them vote for Hillary versus Trump. They massaged the data differently. The Clinton campaign also believed that, Trump would never get through all the way to the end, but he did because he had an AI tool at his hands to make sure every speech had the deepest form of impact on the social media systems that were engaged in those people that were going to potentially vote for him. Who simply wouldn't vote for Hillary because it was the continuing of that dynasty, and that dynasty needed to come to an end.
Yeah, I've seen articles where, you know, Trump is seen as bad, all right, but Obama used it and that sort of thing as well, you know, but it's not seen as bad as him employing it. Has it been going on a while, this sort of stuff with the elections and that?
So as I said, AI has been available commercially since 2002 to 2004. Now, there were AIs that were available at the military industrial complex level as up into the mid 80s, around the mid 80s. See, it is the commercial AIs that ultimately are making it the true Wild West, because there are areas that people thought you would never use an AI to look at information. Or the AI finds whole new angles humans never saw in their own system and then reports it as a synopsis to a human being who has to understand it and then pitch it to someone as a new way of emerging markets or emerging ways of controlling whatever.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, like, I know a lot of the high-frequency trading sort of companies that came out of nowhere, they've got these powerful black box sort of environments.
That's all AI based. All those big high frequency trading systems are all AI based. There's no longer a user behind them.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I've had a background in trading, and I went the long road to do it and learn it thoroughly. And I see these charts, and they actually absolutely make no sense at all. The charts.
Right. Because the AI is predicting very far into the future, into the futures market. Ha ha ha.
Yeah. But I also see one thing you've said about the markets is there's off-world funds that need to be bled into the reality somehow. So it's like the nonsense of it is potentially that as well from my angle.
Right. You can only go so long robbing Peter to pay Paul and keeping the Ponzi system scheme we got going here. So the amount of money and the brain drain that was done from the 50s, 60s, and 70s all the way to the 80s and 90s, hundreds of millions of people to build out what? Antarctica, subsurface bases, subpolar bases, sub-ocean bases, deep underground bases, and then off-world asteroid bases and Mars and the other ones and stuff like that. They all have facilities on them. Okay, and a way to transfer themselves from point A to point B that's highly technologically based from an ancient builder race. Okay, that's all stuff that's been around a long, long time. It's just the different factions that are in power, the different generations and eras of time and history that figure out how to effectively use it.
How about the actual hardware, right, that runs these powerful things? Because there's a certain, like, I come from an IT consulting background, and I know there's hardware like HP and all that and Dell that have all this stuff out there, but it's sort of revealed to the public that this is the marketing of the public and the upgrades and the future upgrades, but there's a whole like quantum computing and stuff like that, right?
All right, so I'm going to give you a macro explanation of how some of the first AIs were employed without anybody in our history really knowing it. So let's go back to the America Online days. So 96 is when America Online is really thumping hard, putting out their 56K modems. We just went from 9K baud to 18.8 to 36 to 56, so on and so forth. There is where these interchanges were built, where you would dial in into an exchange system. Now that exchange system AOL owned, that began the first way to implement an AI, and then Wi-Fi came out. And you could have an apartment building, let's say in New York City, with, let's say, 500 apartments in it, and 450 of them each have a Wi-Fi with a basic computer. Now, if you've heard of the SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Information, everyone can download this little file and they'll collectively scan the skies and use everyone's computer to break down the database.
Yeah, it's exactly like Bitcoin mining to me.
Correct. So you're doing that concept. Now, if you have an apartment of 400 apartments, each with their own Wi-Fi, each with their own computer, each one having the bandwidth, the total available bandwidth to each individual line, and that code is being transferred from router to router to router without ever touching your actual PC.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I actually remember this now.
There's where AI was implemented within the hardware and the firmware. Now, fast forward to today's society, you have these massive server farms that have these massive RAID drives that are all connected to each other through fiber. The AIs don't actually need to exist in a computer.
Yeah, that was the thing with person of interest, because Andrew mentioned Samaritan, which was the controlled negative one that, or actually no, it wasn't controlled. It had no rules, but it was massaged to take out and can dominate the world. And it was using people and creating chips to put into people's heads and creating the whole education system for humanity to work for it and stuff. Whereas the good guys had another AI, they just called it the machine. And the way it escaped being eradicated was get into the actual power, the actual frequency of the power lines and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, in the 1970s and 80s, there was a term called phone phreaking. You familiar with that?
No, I'm not.
Each different bubble of reality is true.
A galactic historian is a person that looks at all the lines of dramatic karma.
Nudge, nudge. It's the Holy Grail. Improvise. Mysterious. It's counter psychic intelligence.
Why is DNA farming of this star cluster so important?
Because we do manifest our reality. We do create our reality.